stories that'll keep you awake at night. Reddit is filled with millions of stories, but every once in a while, someone shares an experience so terrifying that it makes thousands of people question what really happened. Tonight I've gathered 3 chilling stories inspired by the kinds of encounters people post online. These range from creepy strangers to unexplained events to something that should never been found in the woods. Turn off the lights, grab a blanket, and if you're listening alone, maybe leave the light on. And while you're watching this, I am making a Minecraft build. It is a farm because I'm replacing my old farm. I've built this farm many times before. I'm trying something new with my design because I'm going more birch design, if you can see by my farm and my house. Hopefully you guys like it. If you guys want a copy, you can. And I do not recommend trying to sleep through this video. You might just get nightmares. So without further ado, let's begin. Further ado. Oh my gosh, I can't even pronounce that word properly. Holy. Back to school, guys. Story 1. The wrong number. A few years ago, I got a text from an unknown number. It simply said, "Don't answer the door." I assumed it meant for someone else and ignored it. 5 minutes later, another message came. "He's still outside." At this point, I replied, "Wrong number." No response. Instead, a picture arrived. It was my apartment building. Not just the building, my floor. I froze. Someone outside knew exactly where I lived and I looked through the people. Nothing. Then, a slow knock. 3 taps. No one spoke. I stayed completely still. Another text appeared. "He's pretending to leave." I heard footsteps walking away. Then, for almost 10 minutes, as I was starting to relax, the doorknob slowly turned. Whoever was outside wasn't knocking anymore. They were trying to get in. I immediately called the police. While I waited, another text came. "Don't make any noise." I couldn't understand how the stranger knew what was happening. Police arrived within minutes. They searched the hallway, but no one. But downstairs, they found a man hiding beneath the stairwell. He had gloves, a backpack, and several lock-picking tools. The police never figured out who had been texting me. The number was disconnected. To this day, I still don't know if this anonymous texter saved my life or they were watching me this entire time. Now, this story is actually pretty good, you know? My only question was, who was this person texting? And I have a theory that it was probably like the person trying to break in, you know? Telling her that someone's there, pretending to leave. Like, how would someone know that? Maybe it was God, you know? Maybe God was texting her, telling her to maybe be quiet, lock your door. But it's good she called the cops. But, you know, there's a bunch of theories. My theory is that the person trying to break in was texting her and telling her what to do. You know, if she didn't call the cops, he probably would have told her to, like, hide in a closet while he broke in and, like, probably would have killed her or something. But let's move on to the next one. Story 2. The Cabin in the Woods. My friends and I rented a small cabin deep into the mountains. No internet, no cell service. Just trees for miles. The first night was peaceful. The second wasn't. Around 2 a.m., something started walking around the cabin. Crunch, crunch, crunch. At first we assumed it was a deer. Then it stopped outside my bedroom window. 5 minutes passed. No movement. No sound. Then slow scrapes across the glass. We grabbed the flashlights. Nothing outside. No footprints, no animals. Just darkness. The next morning, we noticed something strange. There were footprints. Bare footprints. Leading to the forest. Stopping beneath every window, then disappearing. Not returning, just gone. We locked every door that night. Around midnight, 3 loud bangs shook the front door. Nobody answered. No voices. Only knocking. Then it started on the back door, too. Someone or something was moving around the cabin. We stayed awake until sunrise. As soon as the daylight came, we packed everything and left. Weeks later, the owner contacted us. He asked us one question. "Did you hear the knocking that night?" We asked why. He replied, "You're not the first one to mention it." I like how casually he mentions, like, "Did you hear knocking that night?" I'm like, it's just like, just so casual. Like, "Did you hear knocking last night?" And they're like, "Yeah, we did." And like, yeah, just something typical that happens at my cabin. But after the story, it was pretty short. My There was no really complaints. I really just feel like a theory was it was a prank. You know what I mean? Just a prank. Getting the owner in there, you know, pranking them, something very typical. You know, my friends probably would do that to me if I was doing something to them. Maybe I pranked them before. I don't know. There was no really before context or after. This story was kind of dry, nothing good in it. But let's move on. Story 3. The Figure at Mile 13. I drive long distance deliveries for work. One winter night, I was traveling the highway that cuts through hundred of miles of forest. The GPS saw a signal. The snow was falling. No other cars. Then I saw something standing beside the road. A woman. Barefoot. only wearing a thin white dress. She wasn't waving, just moving. She wasn't moving, just standing. I slowed down. Something felt wrong. My instinct screamed, keep driving, so I did. About 20 minutes later, I reached a gas station. The cashier looked at me and asked, you saw her, didn't you? I hadn't said anything. I nodded. He sighed, you aren't the first. He told me drivers have reported seeing the same woman for years, always near mile 13, always standing perfectly still. The police have investigated dozens of times. They never found anyone. Curious, I checked my dash cam footage later. The road was empty. No woman, nothing. Yet I clearly remember slowing down, even stranger. The speedometer showed that I only slowed down to 20 miles per hour for no visible reason. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what the camera captures, it's what it doesn't. This story was pretty cool. I do gotta say, it was pretty dry, but pretty nice at the same time. But I don't know actually. Wasn't really a 10 out of 10 story. You know, not 10, but it was there, okay? It was not as good as the second one or the first one. This one's kind of a bad one. Very, like, short. Very short. It's a very, very short story. But let's move on to the next. I made sure to pick a long one this time. Hopefully you guys like it. Let's start. The campground rule no one told me about. When I was 19, I got a summer job working at a campground deep in the North Canada. It wasn't one of those tourist places with RV hookups and hundreds of families. It was small, maybe 15 campsites surrounded by miles of forest. The nearest town was almost an hour away. The manager David only had one rule and repeated it over and over. If anyone knocks at the cabin after midnight, don't answer unless you know exactly who it is. I laughed. Who? What are bears? Are bears learning how to knock now? He didn't laugh. I'm serious. That should have been my first warning. The first few weeks were completely normal. I'd clean campsites, collect firewood, and help campers check in. Nights were peaceful. You could hear crickets and owls, an occasional wolf somewhere in the distance. Then one Friday, a family packed up early. They looked terrified. The father came into the office and quietly asked, has anyone else complained about something walking around another campsite at night? I told him no. He looked relieved, but only for a second. I keep hearing footsteps around our tent. Did you look? Yeah. And? There was no one there. I assumed he was just hearing animals until it happened to me. Around 2:30 in the morning, I woke up with two footsteps around my cabin. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Slow, deliberate. Not like an animal, like someone pacing. Back and forth, back and forth. I peeked through the blinds. Nothing. The flashlight by my bed was shaking in my hand. The footsteps continued for nearly 10 minutes before suddenly stopping. The silence the silence awkward afterward felt even worse. The next morning I found footprints, bare footprints, leading up to my porch, then disappearing. Not walking away, just gone. I showed Dave. He stared at them for a long time before quietly sweeping them away with a broom. Forget you saw those. For that night I locked every window, and exactly 3:04 knock, knock, knock. 3 slow knocks. I froze. Then the voice came, hey, it's Dave. Something felt wrong. His voice sounded almost right. Almost. But there was no truck outside. No flashlight, no footsteps. Just the voice. Open the door! I remember the rule. I stayed silent. After 30 seconds, the voice changed. It became deeper, slower. Please. Then it started laughing. Not loudly, just enough for me to hear it through the wood. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, Dave walked in carrying coffee. I immediately asked him, why were you at my cabin last night? He stared at me. I wasn't. When I described his voice, his color drained from the face. Without saying another word, he grabbed a campground map. 3 campsites had been checked out overnight without telling anyone. The tents were gone, no notes, no refund requests, nothing. They had simply left. A week later, another employee arrived. His name was Tyler. I warned about the knocking. He laughed exactly like I had. 2 nights later, he ignored the rule. At breakfast, he looked exhausted. Someone had knocked on his cabin around 1 a.m. He answered, no one was there. He noticed muddy footprints leading towards the woods. For some reason, he followed them. He walked nearly half a kilometer before he realized he had completely gone silent. The forest had completely gone silent. My bad, guys. No insects, no birds, nothing. Then he heard something whisper behind him. Wrong way. He spun around. No one. No one. Then he looked back at the trail. The footsteps had changed direction. They were leading toward him. He sprinted back to the campground and refused to work another night. By August, I was counting down the days until summer ended. Then, when my final shift, heavy rain kept every camper away. I was completely alone. Around midnight, the power went out. The entire campground disappeared in the darkness. Even the emergency lights failed. Then, knock, knock, knock. This time it wasn't my cabin. It was the office door. I grabbed my flashlight, beamed it out the window. I was standing outside. Standing outside was me. Same clothes, same haircut, same flashlight. It smiled. I didn't. It slowly raised one hand and knocked again. 3 times. I, I backed away until I hit the wall. When I looked back, the window was empty. Power returned a few minutes later. The next morning, I quit. Dave didn't try to convince me to stay. He only nodded. Before I drove away, I asked him one more question. What was outside my window? He sighed. I've been working here for 23 years. Well, I've learned something. What? What? If you ever see yourself in the woods, he looked straight in the eyes. Make sure you're the only one who leaves. I never went back. A few months later, I searched online to see if anyone else had worked there. The campground was permanently closed. No explanation, just abandoned. But now, every now and then, someone posts a picture of hiking nearby. And if you zoom in on the tree line, there's always someone standing there, watching. The strange part? Everyone who uploads a picture says the same thing. I don't remember anyone else being there. Maybe it's just the shadows. Or maybe it's just an optical illusion. Or maybe some rules exist for a reason. Well, that story was pretty good. It was a pretty long story. I think it did warn you guys that it was gonna be a long story, but I gotta say it was pretty nice. It was a 10 out of 10 story. Good concepts, good everything. It's like one that keeps you on your edge and like it's something you would think about every night. I don't have any complaints about that one. But let's move on to the next. This one is as long as that one. I even might be a little longer. I worked at the night shift at a 24-hour gas station. One customer never left. I worked plenty of overnight jobs, but nothing compares to what happened during the 6 months of a lonely gas station just off the highway. I never told anyone the full story because I didn't know how ridiculous it sounded. But after it happened that night, I quit without giving 2 weeks' notice. Here's what happened. I was 21 when I started working at the graveyard shift at the gas station in the middle of nowhere. The station sat beside me along the stretch of highway surrounded between thick forests. During the day, it was busy enough, but after midnight, cars become rare. Sometimes you would hear, sometimes an hour would pass seeing another vehicle. Without seeing another vehicle, my bad, chat. My manager handed me the keys my first night and said something strange. If a man wearing a gray hoodie comes in after 3 a.m., don't acknowledge him. I laughed. What do you mean? Like, don't serve him? He didn't smile. Pretend he isn't there. I figured out it was some weird prank they played for their new employees. The first month, nothing unusual happened. Truckers stopped for their coffee. Travelers bought their snacks. Teenagers came after parties. It was boring. Then one rainy Thursday morning, the clock hit exactly 3:17 a.m. The automatic doors slammed open. No chime, just silence. The man wearing a gray hoodie walked inside. His hood covered most of his face. His clothes were soaking wet, but there wasn't a single drop of water on the floor behind him. He wandered every aisle slowly, never picked up anything, never looked at me. He simply walked. After about 5 minutes, he stopped in front of the refrigerator. Without turning, he spoke. You shouldn't be here tonight. Every hair on my arm stood up. I didn't answer. A few seconds later, he walked back out. The doors opened, closed. I ran to the window. There was no one outside, no car, no footprints in the rain. No footprints in the rain, nothing. The next morning, I asked my manager. He sighed. So, you saw him? You knew? I worked here for 11 years. What is he? I don't know. Does anyone else see him? Everyone eventually does. I wanted to quit right then. Instead, I convinced myself there may be a logical explanation until the security camera started acting strange. Every morning, I had to review the overnight footage. On every camera, a gray hooded man appeared perfectly normal, except he never entered the building. The doors never opened. One frame, he simply existed from inside the store. The next frame, he was gone. No beginning, no end, just there. A week later, an older truck driver came in. He looked exhausted. While paying, he glanced over towards the window. He whispered, "Did he come tonight?" I froze. "You've seen him?" The driver nodded slowly. I've seen him at 5 different gas stations over 20 years. What happens when you talk to him? The driver looked at me with absolute seriousness. You won't see him again. That sounds like a good thing. He shook his head. No. What do you mean? You stopped seeing everyone else. He left. I couldn't stop thinking about that. 3 nights later, 3:17 a.m. The doors open again. Gray hoodie. Same slow walk, same silence. This time he stopped and directly in front of the counter. I could barely breathe. He raised one finger and pointed toward the front windows outside. Something was standing beside my car. It looked exactly like me. Same uniform, same tag, same face. They were smiling. I looked towards the counter. He was gone. Customer, he was gone. Then I looked outside again. The person beside my car. I saw the. Wait, my bad, chat. When I looked outside again, so was the person beside my car. I called my manager immediately. He drove 45 minutes to the gas station without asking any questions. When he arrived, I told him everything. Instead of laughing, he unlocked a drawer beneath the register. Inside was a worn notebook. Every overnight employee had written inside of it. The entries went back 30 years. Every single one described the same thing. Same thing. Same warning. But the final pages were different. Employees stopped writing. Instead of other workers, the written notes beside their name. Missing. Never came back. Car found. Family still searching. I counted. 9 names. 9 disappearances. I quit the next morning. Months passed. I tried to forget everything. Then one evening I stopped for gas while driving through another province. Completely different gas station. Completely different company. Different town. I noticed the cashier staring at me. You okay? I asked. He looked pale. I was going to ask you the same thing. What? He slowly pointed at me. I turned. Standing beside the refrigerator, a man with a soaking gray hoodie, watching me. Not the cashier, me. I left everything on the counter and walked out. Never looked back. I avoid gas stations after dark now. If my tank gets low at night, I keep driving until sunrise. Because every once in a while I pass on that one highway, I see someone standing outside wearing a gray hoodie, waiting, like they know I'm coming. If you ever work the night shift, you know how strange and lonely places feel after midnight. Or maybe just an overactive imagination. Or maybe some customers never really leave. If you enjoyed the stories, leave a for more terrifying subscribe for more terrifying tales. Remember, the next time you stop for gas at 3 a.m., pay attention to who's already inside. Bye.